Focus on ourself, like go. You are wasting too much energy trying to keep people in your life who are perfectly okay with watching you struggle to hold them there. The truth is, not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you. And the sooner you accept that, the lighter your life becomes. Because peace doesn't come from holding tighter. It comes from letting go and finally focusing on you. At some point, you have to stop fighting for people who make you feel like you're hard to love. You have to stop begging to be understood, stop chasing after those who keep showing you indifference, and stop thinking your worth is something you have to prove. Because the moment you redirect that energy toward yourself, your healing, your goals, your growth, your entire world shifts. We spend so much time trying to fix people, trying to make them stay, trying to hold relationships together that are already falling apart. But here's the truth: when something is meant for you, you won't have to force it. You won't have to convince anyone to see your value or fight for someone to respect your effort. Real connection flows, it doesn't need to be chased. When you focus on yourself, you stop living reactively. You stop waiting for other people to give you permission to feel happy or whole. You realize that peace doesn't come from outside validation. It comes from alignment. And that alignment starts when you finally decide, I'm done chasing. I'm choosing me. So how do you actually do that? How do you move on from people who disappointed you, drained you, or disappeared on you? How do you reclaim your energy and rebuild your strength? Let's break it down into 5 key truths. 5 mindset shifts that will help you stop clinging to what's gone and start pouring into what's next. Every time you chase someone who isn't choosing you, you abandon a part of yourself. You teach your heart to settle for crumbs when you deserve the whole meal. It's a hard truth to face, but chasing people who pull away doesn't make them love you. It only makes you forget how to love yourself. You can't build peace on top of someone else's inconsistency. You can't find security in people who keep showing you uncertainty. The moment you stop chasing others and start choosing yourself, everything in your life begins to shift. It starts with realizing that your energy is precious. Every call you overthink, every message you send just to get a reaction, every time you question your worth because someone else isn't reciprocating, that's energy leaving your body. That's time and power you could be using to build yourself, to invest in your dreams, to nurture your growth. Chasing people drains you because it's rooted in lack. You're trying to fill a space inside you with validation that can only come from within. When you start choosing yourself, that lack disappears because you become your own source of peace. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you stop caring or become cold. It means you stop overextending for people who don't meet you halfway. You stop proving your worth to those who are blind to it. You stop running after people who were never meant to stay. It's realizing that not everyone who walks into your life deserves to stay, and not every loss is a bad thing. Sometimes, letting people drift away is the universe's way of making space for what's truly aligned with you. When you start choosing yourself, your boundaries get stronger. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop tolerating behavior that drains your peace just because you're afraid of being alone. You learn that solitude isn't a punishment, it's a reset. It's the space where you meet yourself again, where you rebuild your strength, where you remember your worth. And from that space, you attract people who see your value without you having to prove it. There's power in redirecting your energy inward. Instead of asking, why don't they care about me? Ask, why do I keep giving to people who don't? That question changes everything. It shifts your focus from them to you, from control to clarity. When you start pouring that same effort into yourself, into your health, your mindset, your goals, the things that once consumed you lose their grip. You begin to glow differently, walk differently, and think differently. You become magnetic not because you're chasing, but because you've learned to stand still in your worth. When you choose yourself, you set the standard for how others treat you. You stop begging for love and start embodying it. You stop chasing validation and start radiating confidence. You realize that the right people won't require you to lose yourself to keep them. And once you understand that, you'll never chase again, because you'll know that the one person worth fighting for has been you all along. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. That simple truth changes everything once you finally accept it. We're taught to hold on, to fix, to keep giving even when it's draining us. But peace is not something you earn by overextending yourself. It's something you protect by knowing when to stop. The more you sacrifice your peace to keep people happy, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You can't build a calm, fulfilling life while constantly walking on eggshells to maintain someone else's comfort. At some point, you have to decide that your peace is worth more than their approval. When you let people, situations, or habits disturb your inner calm, you lose control of your energy. You start reacting instead of responding, pleasing instead of protecting, surviving instead of thriving. That constant tension, that feeling of being stretched too thin, it's your body's way of telling you that something's off. And yet, so many people ignore it. They stay in jobs that drain them, relationships that exhaust them, friendships that no longer align with who they're becoming, all because they're afraid of change. But here's the truth: peace will always ask you to choose discomfort temporarily so you can find freedom permanently. Letting go of what costs your peace doesn't make you cold-hearted. It makes you self-aware. You start realizing that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to justify your decisions to people who refuse to understand them. You don't have to engage with energy that feels heavy, manipulative, or draining. You can love people and still say, I need space. You can care deeply and still say, this no longer feels right. That's what emotional maturity looks like. Not fighting harder for chaos, but choosing calm even when it means walking away. There's a moment in everyone's journey where protecting peace feels lonely. You might lose people who were used to your constant availability. You might disappoint those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. But that space you create, that quiet that follows, is where you rediscover yourself. It's where you reconnect with your values, your focus, and your strength. Because once you've tasted peace, chaos stops feeling like home. You start craving stillness, not stimulation. You start valuing silence, not noise. You start seeing that the people and places that nurture your peace are the ones that deserve your presence. Protecting your peace means learning to say no without guilt. It means not responding to every message immediately, not explaining your boundaries, not apologizing for prioritizing yourself. It means noticing the difference between effort that feels good and effort that feels forced. The truth is, peace will cost you certain people, but chaos will cost you yourself. When you realize that, the choice becomes easy. You start walking away from anything that feels heavy, anything that interrupts your calm, anything that steals your energy. Because you've finally learned that peace isn't just a feeling. It's a lifestyle, one that begins the moment you decide you're no longer willing to lose yourself to keep the wrong things. You don't need closure from someone who broke you. You need healing from within. Waiting for someone to explain why they hurt you is like standing in the rain, hoping the storm will apologize for getting you wet. It's never going to happen. The truth is, closure doesn't come in the form of an apology, a long message, or a perfect conversation that ties everything up neatly. Closure is the moment you stop looking for answers outside yourself and start accepting what is. It's when you decide to stop chasing clarity from someone who was never capable of giving it in the first place. We often tell ourselves that if we just understood why things happened the way they did, we could move on. But what we're really saying is, I want to make sense of their choices so I can stop blaming myself. You don't need them to validate your pain to let go of it. You don't need to hear them admit they were wrong to know that you deserved better. The need for closure is just your mind trying to solve an emotional puzzle that doesn't have logical pieces. Some people don't act out of reason. They act out of wounds. And sometimes, that's all the explanation you're ever going to get. Healing, on the other hand, is an act of courage. It means sitting with the silence that follows a goodbye and learning to be okay with it. It means feeling the ache without numbing it, crying without shame, forgiving without expecting anything in return. Healing is about reclaiming the energy you've been wasting on what went wrong and redirecting it toward what's next. It's not easy, but it's freedom. Because when you finally stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That's when you start to heal. There's also power in realizing that closure doesn't come from contact. It comes from clarity. You gain that clarity the moment you stop romanticizing potential and start accepting reality. You stop replaying the story trying to find the version where they treat you better. You stop bargaining with the past. You accept that what happened, and that you have the right to move forward even without their permission. Closure is the day you decide the story no longer deserves your energy. It's the day you release the grip that pain has on your heart and choose to write a new chapter. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without reopening the wound. It's about thanking the experience for what it taught you, even if it hurt. It's realizing that you don't need someone to say sorry for you to find peace. You get to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. You get to walk away, not because you don't care, but because you finally care about yourself enough to stop waiting. The truth is, closure doesn't come from them coming back. It comes from you choosing to move on. And when you do, you'll look back one day and realize you didn't need their words to heal. You just needed your own strength to begin. When you've spent so long revolving around other people, their needs, their moods, their approval, it's easy to forget who you are. You start to lose your voice in the noise of trying to please everyone else. You adapt, you shrink, you compromise until one day you look in the mirror and realize you've been living on autopilot, existing for others instead of yourself. That's why rebuilding your identity around your own growth is so important. It's about remembering who you are when you're not trying to be who someone else wants you to be. It's about reclaiming your power, your passion, and your purpose. When you start focusing on your own growth, something powerful happens. You stop living reactively. You stop letting other people's behavior determine how you feel about yourself. You stop chasing validation and start creating it through action. The world teaches us to define ourselves by our relationships, our titles, our status, or the approval of others. But none of that truly defines you. Who you are is what you build when no one's watching. It's the small choices, the discipline, the courage to keep showing up for yourself even when no one else does. Rebuilding your identity means asking yourself hard questions. What do I actually want? What excites me? What am I passionate about? When was the last time I did something purely because it made me feel alive, not because it impressed someone else? These questions are uncomfortable because they force you to face the parts of yourself you've ignored. But they're also freeing. They remind you that you are allowed to change. You're allowed to grow beyond what people expect of you. You're allowed to outgrow versions of yourself that were built out of survival instead of intention. The more you focus on your own growth, the less you need external validation. You start to realize that your worth isn't tied to who stays or who leaves, who approves or who criticizes. Your worth comes from your willingness to evolve. Growth isn't about being perfect, it's about being persistent. It's about choosing progress over comfort, purpose over distraction. When you start setting goals for yourself, even small ones, and commit to them, you build self-respect. You begin to trust yourself again, and that trust becomes the foundation for everything else in your life. There's also a beautiful shift that happens when you start living for your own growth. You stop competing and start creating. You stop comparing your path to others because you're too busy building your own. You stop being triggered by other people's success because you finally understand there's enough space for everyone to thrive. The peace that comes from alignment, from living in a way that reflects your values, is unmatched. You stop seeking distractions to fill the void because you've filled it with purpose. Rebuilding your identity isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to yourself. It's about peeling away everything that was never truly you. The expectations, the guilt, the fear, and remembering the person you were before the world told you who to be. When you focus on your growth, you stop orbiting around others and become the center of your own life again. That's where your power lies, not in chasing who you were, but in building who you're meant to become. Protecting your peace is one of the most powerful things you will ever learn to do. It's not selfish, it's survival. Peace is not something you stumble upon, it's something you create, protect, and defend every single day. It's about knowing that your emotional space is sacred. Not everyone deserves access to it. When you begin to honor your peace, you start making decisions that serve your well-being instead of your fears. You stop engaging in arguments that lead nowhere. You stop chasing validation from people who will never give it, and you stop entertaining situations that cost you your sense of calm. The truth is, peace doesn't mean your life will be perfect or quiet all the time. It means you've learned to stay centered even when the world around you is chaotic. You stop letting external noise determine your internal state. You stop allowing people's opinions to dictate your emotions. Protecting your peace means setting clear boundaries and actually enforcing them, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Because peace isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about staying aligned with yourself. Every time you say no to something that disturbs your balance, you're saying yes to your inner strength. It takes courage to protect your peace, especially in a world that glorifies business, drama, and constant connection. You'll be tempted to respond to every message, to defend yourself when misunderstood, to fix situations that aren't yours to fix. But peace comes when you choose silence over reaction, when you walk away instead of proving your point, when you decide that not everything deserves your energy. You don't need to attend every battle you're invited to. You don't need to prove your growth to anyone. Sometimes, walking away quietly is the loudest form of self-respect. Protecting your peace also means being intentional about what you allow into your mind. The content you consume, the conversations you engage in, the people you surround yourself with, they all impact your inner state. You start to realize that peace isn't found in control, it's found in clarity. You can't control what people say or do, but you can control how much of it you let into your world. Protecting your peace is choosing what deserves your attention and what doesn't. It's learning to pause before you react, to breathe before you respond, and to let go before resentment takes root. When you make peace your priority, you start to attract different energy. The people who thrive on drama will drift away because you're no longer feeding into it. The situations that once triggered you will lose their power. You begin to live life on your terms, grounded, calm, and clear. You start to understand that peace is not something you find at the end of chaos. It's something you choose in the middle of it. And every time you choose peace over reaction, boundaries over people, pleasing, self-respect over explanation, you reclaim another piece of yourself. Because at the end of the day, nothing is more valuable than your peace, and the moment you realize that, your entire life changes. At the end of the day, everything comes down to this: your peace, your growth, your energy. The people who are meant for you will never make you question your worth, and the ones who do were simply lessons in disguise. You don't have to chase love, force connection, or hold on to anything that's constantly slipping away. The most powerful thing you can ever do is focus on yourself, your healing, your goals, your happiness, and trust that everything else will align in time. Letting go isn't losing, it's making space. Space for peace, space for purpose, space for people who truly see you and match your energy. You can't receive what's meant for you if your hands are still gripping what's breaking you. So breathe. Release the weight. You don't need to fix the past. You need to free yourself from it. The moment you stop chasing and start choosing yourself, life starts to open up. You begin to see how strong you really are. You realize that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. You start moving with intention, not desperation. You stop proving and start becoming. That's the shift. That's what freedom looks like. So if you remember nothing else from today, remember this: protecting your peace, honoring your worth, and focusing on yourself are not acts of selfishness. They're acts of self-respect. You owe it to yourself to create a life that feels good from the inside out. Because when you finally choose yourself, you stop waiting for others to give you what you've always had within you: power, purpose, and peace. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up for yourself. And thank you for choosing growth over comfort. You are stronger than you think, braver than you feel, and more deserving than you've ever believed. So go out there and focus on yourself. Let them go, let it go, and let peace find you. Thank you for being here. Take care of your heart, protect your energy, and never forget, choosing yourself will always be the best decision you ever make.